So how do you connect undergraduate students with the veteran perspective? Like that's a very challenging
Yeah.
project to go through. And the exhibit that we focused on for a year had iterations, but it was all post 9/11 conflicts. And this was for students that weren't even born when 9/11 happened. So how do we engage that? How do we tell that full scale of that story and then ask them to engage? But through this process of art engagement, and we also had written response because there's also this barrier of, I think people can be very intimidated to make response art. They don't want to pick up a marker or an oil pastel because they don't consider themselves an artist. I'm one of those people that, although I love it all, I will be nervous to make response art. But I can do written responses very well. And so we also had scrolls on the wall where people could engage with what they think, what they learned. And it just builds so much empathy because you're learning not only from the veteran in that gallery space, you weren't just learning from the artist and the veteran perspective, but then any written feedback or art feedback that you saw, you could continue to engage in that conversation. Jen and I also just co-authored an article about this because we did a whole research study for a year that proved these theories that people that went through guided tours of the exhibition, went through a guided workshop and made response art in direct conversation with these artists. At the end of it, through a series of surveys, they were like, oh, I want to actively help and learn more about veterans rather than passively help. And it's fascinating to see the power of what art can do and how it can share so much and it can provide so much information. And I mean, art is very human, like it's very vulnerable when people make artwork, but then I think to help then connect people to that creates this whole level of understanding, and I think that makes us all more empathetic humans.
What were those soft spots that allowed, like you're saying, just very different types of people connecting with these veterans?
I think it's honesty, like, because even I had my own biases going in about veterans and the veteran experience, and I don't come from a military family. I don't know the same information, that I don't have those lived experiences in very close capacities. But when you read some of these works and some of these lived experiences that they have, or talking about materiality and stereotypes, and then meeting these artists, and then they're just as vulnerable in person, you then, one, see them as a human being. You're not seeing them as this identity that you've personified in your head. They're a human that had an experience. They could have been drafted. They could have any number of things. And so I think it helped me to remove some of the political sides of war, violence, government away, and just allowed me to see them as human beings and as artists that are trying to heal through art. Like all of them make their art to heal from their traumas.